That's quite a list. And you would think for any other president, they would have been long sacked by now, as you would say. But unfortunately, the list goes far beyond that, and it continues to grow because he's never held to account for any of that. Let's look at some of the other things he's said. He says his son died in combat. He died of cancer. He tells this story about the Amtrak train, about a conductor who died 15 years before he even became senator. He claims his house burned down with his wife in it and she escaped. He claimed he worked for a lumber company, drove an 18-wheel truck, and then visited a synagogue after a shooting. None of those things were true. And why does this matter? It goes to his character. And he's willing to lie about anything. And if he's willing to lie about the little things, we know he's lying about the big things as well. I think he does it to show empathy with his audiences that he's speaking to, but in turn, it diminishes their very experience by saying, oh, that happened to me too. So this is a man who's a serial liar. We all know it, but he's never held to account.
Extraordinary, isn't it? I was a student, he said, up north in the civil rights movement. There is no historical evidence to support the claim. And I just repeat, in 1987, consistent with what Peggy just said, this is the President of the United States. Biden conceded he was, quote, not an activist during the 1960s. And then last January implied that he was arrested for being a civil rights activist. Peggy, just following on what you've said, it defies belief that there is nothing but sort of almost detached amusement that this 80-year-old with a history of fiddling with the truth is an uncriticised President of the United States.
Right. And like I said, some of those things may not matter, but it's the bigger lies which have great consequences to not only the American people, but to the world. I'll tell you some of the big ones he's told lately. Afghanistan was a success. The economy is strong. All the economists back my plan. The job market is robust. I've created over 12 million jobs. The border is secure. I've presided over the largest deficit reduction in history, and inflation is low. It shows how little he cares, but it also may show how little he knows. These are dangerous times for America. We need and should expect and demand a president on the top of his game. And clearly he is not, because he can't tell fact from fiction, but we can. The American people can, and the world can as well.
When reporters asked him at the White House only last Friday if he'd hold China accountable for COVID after an official report, now you and I have talked for months and months, years in fact, about there's a nexus unanalysed between Biden and China, most probably relating to his son. He's very, very reticent about saying anything negative about China. So reporters asked him at the White House on Friday if he would hold China accountable for COVID after an official report said that it likely, coronavirus, came from a lab leak. Biden threw his hands up, looked annoyed and walked away. Peggy, what would happen if Donald Trump had done that?
Well, of course, he looked annoyed and walked away because he's been complicit in the cover-up, and this is going to continue to come out. We know there's two standards of accountability. We've seen that abundantly clear. It's also abundantly clear that Donald Trump was right about a lot of these things, and this information continues to roll out. So pop some popcorn and watch, because this is going to continue to put the heat and the pressure on Biden and his administration.